The morning sun spilled gold across the rooftops of Eldenwood, glinting off the dew, damp thatch of every cottage. Villagers stirred, shuffling to the market, carrying baskets of fresh bread and woven goods. Among them moved a figure who blended with ease, slender, quiet, almost ethereal in her simplicity. To anyone else, she was just another face in the village. To herself, she was a secret walking among mortals. Illyra adjusted the scarf around her neck, hiding the faint silver streak in her hair, a mark she prayed would never be noticed. Her fingers brushed against the small talisman tucked beneath her blouse, warm against her chest. It pulsed faintly, a reminder of who she really was. She paused at the edge of the forest, letting her senses drift beyond the ordinary. The wind carried whispers through the trees, subtle shifts of leaves, the scent of fur and wild prey. Her heartbeat quickened, not out of fear, but anticipation. Something stirred, and instinct told her that the safety of her simple facade was fragile. Illyra, mourning, called old Mira, the baker's wife, waving from the market square. Illyra smiled politely, slipping into conversation about loaves and eggs, laughter echoing, while her mind scanned the shadows of the trees beyond. She could feel it, a presence watching, waiting, and in that moment she knew she was not as hidden as she believed. The forest beyond Eldenwood trembled with life as dusk began to settle. A cool breeze carried the scent of pine and earth, mingled with something wilder, more feral. Illyra's heart thudded in her chest. She paused, noticing tracks in the soft soil. Large, deliberate, not of any villager she had ever known. A shadow flickered among the trees, tall, commanding. Her breath caught. He was here, the Alpha. Even from a distance, his presence radiated authority, an invisible current that prickled her skin. The villagers, oblivious, continued their chores, unaware of the tension lurking at the edge of their quiet lives. Illyra's pulse raced as she sensed his eyes, not just seeing but feeling, piercing through the layers she had so carefully built. She ducked behind an old oak, fingers brushing against the rough bark, forcing her composure. She told herself he must be passing through, just another wanderer, but instinct whispered otherwise. He was looking for something, or someone. A low growl drifted from deeper in the woods, and the hairs along her spine lifted. Illyra tightened her grip on her basket, imagining herself as just another villager. Yet even as she forced a smile at a passing child, she knew the forest no longer belonged to her alone. When he stepped into the clearing the next morning, Illyra felt it before her eyes even met his. There was an undeniable force, a pull magnetic and terrifying. The stranger, all dark with eyes that seemed to burn through everything, paused, his gaze locking with hers. Recognition. She felt it. And somehow so did he. "Good morning," he said, voice low, smooth, commanding. Yet there was something beneath it, something familiar, almost intimate. Illyra faltered, cheeks flushing, her heartbeat stuttered. Does he? No. The thought clawed at her chest. She turned abruptly, pretending to be busy with her basket, the sound of apples rattling inside masking the tremor in her hands. The villagers, distracted by their own routines, didn't notice the tension. But Illyra couldn't stop feeling his gaze, following her, threading through the crowd, through the laughter and chatter. She ducked into an alleyway, heart hammering. He's not just any stranger. The pull between them was undeniable and dangerous. And the thought made her breath catch. Somewhere deep in the forest, the wind shifted, carrying a whisper she knew wasn't of this world. She shivered, knowing that the moment she had feared had arrived. Her secret, her hidden self, was no longer entirely safe. And the Alpha had recognized her. The village square glittered with lanterns as dusk settled, turning cobblestones into pools of molten gold. Music drifted from the tavern, mingling with the scent of roasted meat and sweet pastries. Illyra moved among the villagers, her basket now filled with goods, forcing a smile as she passed laughing children and old merchants. Yet beneath her calm exterior, her chest still burned from the memory of the Alpha's gaze. She had hoped, perhaps foolishly, that he might approach her, acknowledge her presence with something other than that cold, unreadable expression. But tonight, surrounded by revelry, he had barely spared her a glance. When he did, it was courteous, distant, and unmistakably indifferent. "Illyra," a cheerful voice called. She turned to see Mara, her friend, tugging at her sleeve. "Come dance. You can't just hide behind your baskets all night." Illyra laughed softly, the sound a brittle mask over her inner turmoil. She nodded and followed, trying to lose herself in the music. Yet the Alpha's shadow hovered at the edges of her vision. Every time she looked, he seemed impossibly composed, perfectly controlled, a predator who had spotted her and decided, for now, that she wasn't his concern. She spun in the dance circle, feeling eyes on her back. She forced herself to meet the gaze of villagers, to smile politely at strangers, to act like any other girl in Eldenwood. But inside, her heart twisted. Why does it hurt so much? She thought. He doesn't even know me. And yet, a sudden commotion near the festival's center drew her attention. A villager had tripped, spilling a tray of pastries. Laughter erupted, and the Alpha's head turned sharply. For a fleeting moment, their eyes met again. This time, she glimpsed a flicker of something, recognition, concern, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. He turned away, leaving her to her humiliation and unspoken longing. Her fingers tightened around the basket. She swallowed the lump in her throat and whispered to herself, "I will not show him. I will not." Yet as she watched him walk toward the shadows at the festival's edge, she realized her secret self. The part that shimmered in the moonlight, that whispered in the wind, was no longer safe from him. The pull between them was undeniable, and tonight, he had chosen indifference, but tomorrow might be different, and the thought left her both terrified and trembling. The village had long fallen into a quiet slumber. Only the rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl disturbed the serenity of the night. Illyra stepped lightly onto the soft forest floor, her breath misting in the cool air. She had told herself it was safe to wander, safe to be alone, but the memory of the Alpha's indifferent gaze at the festival still gnawed at her confidence. She paused by the edge of the clearing, moonlight spilling across her face, silver strands of hair catching the glow like threads of starlight. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from anticipation. She reached into her cloak and drew the talisman from beneath her blouse. The charm pulsed faintly in her palm, warmth spreading into her fingers as if urging her to release what she had kept hidden for so long. The forest seemed to respond. Shadows deepened, whispering, shifting, and she felt the familiar tingle along her spine, the subtle awakening of her shifter nature. It had been years since she allowed it to surface, and now, under the soft gaze of the moon, she let it bloom just enough for herself. Her senses sharpened, the scent of damp earth, the distant rustle of a rabbit, the faint trace of something larger moving through the trees. A low growl vibrated beneath her feet, not a threat, yet, but a reminder. She was no longer just a villager, she was something more, and if the Alpha had been here even now, he would have known, always hiding. She whispered to herself, the words carried away by the wind. She crouched, feeling her muscles respond, bones attuned to the forest. For a heartbeat, she allowed herself the freedom of her true form, just a shimmer in the moonlight, a pulse of power that reminded her of who she truly was. Her thoughts drifted inevitably to him, the Alpha. His presence lingered in her mind like an echo she couldn't shake. Does he sense me? She wondered. The thought made her pulse quicken, and her palms sweat despite the cool night. She had kept herself invisible for so long, blending in, hiding, pretending. But what if he already knew? A twig snapped behind her, sharp and sudden. Her body tensed, instincts flaring. She pivoted, eyes scanning the shadows. Nothing, just the wind, or so she told herself. Her breath came in shallow rhythms, but somewhere deep a warning nagged. She was no longer untouchable, and her secret self, her power, was a beacon for him, even if he didn't yet realize it. She let the moonlight wash over her a little longer, memorizing the feeling of being free, untethered. Then, with a reluctant sigh, she covered her talisman and slipped back toward the village, pretending once again to be nothing more than a simple girl. But the knowledge lingered, heavy in her chest. Tonight, the forest had witnessed her truth, and soon, he would too. The morning sunlight spilled across Eldon, wood like liquid gold, illuminating every corner of the village square. Villagers bustled about, trading goods and exchanging greetings, their laughter masking the underlying tension that seemed to hover in the air, tension only Illyra could feel. Her heart still throbbed from last night, the memory of moonlight, talisman, and the lurking thought that the Alpha might know more than he let on. She moved carefully through the marketplace, pretending casual interest in the fruits and fabrics, when a shadow fell over her. She looked up, and there he was. Tall, imposing, the same cold intensity in his eyes that had left her trembling at the festival. His gaze lingered longer than polite curiosity allowed, and Alara felt the familiar pull in her chest, a magnetic tension that made her stomach twist. "Good morning," he said, voice smooth, measured, carrying that strange undercurrent she couldn't ignore. "Good morning," she replied softly, forcing her tone light, casual. She moved her basket slightly in front of her, as if shielding herself. He didn't look away. Instead, his eyes seemed to pierce her carefully constructed veil. For a moment, the village noise faded, leaving only the two of them in a bubble of unspoken words. Every brush of his gaze felt like fire against her skin, and yet she dared not meet it fully. Alara's mind raced. Why do I feel this? The pull between them was undeniable, yet terrifying. She wanted to run, to hide, to pretend this connection didn't exist, and yet something deep inside urged her to stay, to allow just a glimpse of the truth, however fleeting. "Are you looking for something?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, careful not to betray the rapid beat of her heart. He tilted his head slightly, almost smirking, though his eyes remained unreadable. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "or perhaps I'm only looking for the truth." Her fingers tightened around her basket. He knows, she thought, though part of her refused to accept it. The weight of unspoken words pressed between them, every glance a silent confession, every subtle movement loaded with forbidden desire. The market around them swirled in motion, yet their moment felt suspended. A villager brushed past, snapping Alara from her daze, and the Alpha's gaze lifted briefly before returning to its quiet scrutiny. She took a tentative step back, pretending to adjust her basket, yet her eyes couldn't leave him. The tension simmered, unspoken, electric, a slow burn neither could fully resist, and as he finally turned to walk away, disappearing into the crowded square, Alara felt the ache of longing deepen, that pull. That connection, it was relentless, impossible to deny. She swallowed, pressing her hand to her chest as if trying to steady the storm of emotions within her. "This is forbidden," she whispered, though the words did little to quell the heat that lingered in her veins. And somewhere, beyond the bustling streets and beneath the quiet trees, the Alpha felt it too, the magnetic draw of a bond neither could yet name, but both could feel in the marrow of their bones. The forest beyond Eldenwood trembled with an uneasy stillness. Even the birds seemed hesitant, pausing mid-flight, their calls swallowed by the heavy air. Alara's steps were careful, silent, as if she could hear the world holding its breath. Her talisman pulsed faintly against her chest, a reminder that she was not as hidden as she had always believed. From the shadows, a new presence emerged. He moved with predatory grace, eyes sharp and calculating, every motion a challenge. A rival from another pack, one whose reputation preceded him, a wolf known for cunning and cruelty, had arrived in Eldenwood. Alara felt a shiver travel down her spine, but this was no ordinary fear. The kindling in her chest wasn't panic, but recognition. This threat would test not just her own skills, but the bond she was beginning to form with the Alpha. Her pulse quickened when she sensed movement behind her. He was close, too close. She froze, pretending to examine the moss-covered rocks at her feet. "Quite a charming little village you've chosen." The rival's voice slithered through the trees. "And a most interesting guest." Alara's stomach twisted. He had noticed her. He had noticed her. Her talisman vibrated, almost leaping against her skin, warning her of danger. She clenched her fists, forcing herself to remain calm, forcing herself to stay hidden. But then the Alpha appeared, tall, commanding, and impossibly still. He stepped between Alara and the rival. His presence alone seemed to bend the shadows, draw the tension tight. "Step back," he said, voice low but iron, hard. The rival smirked, undeterred. "I've come for her, and I don't take kindly to anyone standing in my way." Ilara's heart lurched for me. The thought sent a mixture of dread and something unnameable through her. She wanted to step forward to stand beside him, but instinct screamed caution. She had hidden herself for so long, revealing her full power now might change everything. The Alpha's eyes, dark and piercing, never left the rival. "She is mine," he said, each word deliberate, a warning carved from authority. "Do not test me." A growl rumbled from his chest, low and dangerous. The rival's smirk faltered, tension coiling between them like a drawn bowstring. And in that instant, Ilara realized the depth of what had always simmered beneath the surface. He was more than just a figure of authority. He would fight for her, protect her, claim her, yet even as the danger ebbed momentarily, a seed of doubt lodged in her chest. This rival would not vanish quietly, and tonight had proven one undeniable truth. Her life, her secret, and her heart were no longer hers alone. She glanced at the Alpha, feeling the weight of unspoken words pressing between them. His dark gaze held hers for a heartbeat too long, and something stirred deep in her chest, desire, trust, fear, all tangled together, impossible to separate. And as the rival retreated into the shadows, promising this was not the end, Ilara knew one thing with absolute certainty. The storm had only just begun. The night settled over Eldenwood like a velvet blanket, soft and deceptively calm. Lanterns flickered along the cobblestone streets, casting shadows that danced like silent witnesses to the village's quiet lives. Ilara walked slowly, her fingers grazing the edge of her cloak, still tingling from the encounter with the rival earlier that day. Every nerve in her body was alert, every instinct humming with the memory of the Alpha's dark, commanding presence. She paused at the edge of the forest, breathing in the familiar scent of pine and damp earth. The moon hung low, its silver light painting the world in shades of magic and shadow, and there he was himself a shadow within the night, waiting. "Ilara," he said softly, stepping closer. His voice held no authority this time, only the quiet pull that made her chest ache. Her heart stuttered. She wanted to flee, to retreat to the safety of her disguise, but something deep inside refused. She wanted, needed, to stay I. She began, then stopped. Words caught in her throat, tangled with fear and pride. "I shouldn't, I can't," she thought, but the ache of longing was stronger than her caution. He studied her, dark eyes unreadable, yet something flickered within them. A hunger for truth, a desire that mirrored her own. "You don't have to hide from me," he murmured, stepping closer, the faint scent of his presence wrapping around her like a cloak. Ilara's breath hitched. Every part of her wanted to speak, to confess the secret she had guarded for so long, but fear anchored her tongue. What if acknowledging her feelings revealed too much? What if it drew him too close before she was ready? Instead, she whispered, "It's dangerous." Her voice trembled, but the Alpha's gaze held her still. Dangerous, his brows furrowed, and for the first time his voice softened with something she hadn't expected. "Concern, for you, yes," she admitted, her whisper barely audible. Her pulse raced as she felt the invisible thread pulling between them, tightening with every breath. She dared not look fully at him, afraid of the fire she might see in his eyes, yet somehow the pull was mutual, undeniable. A silence stretched between them, thick and electric. The forest seemed to hold its breath, leaves quivering, as if aware of the confession neither had fully spoken. Finally, he stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Ilara," he said, his voice low, intimate, "I feel it too. Whatever this is, it's ours, and I won't let it go." Her breath caught, a shiver of both fear and longing running through her. She wanted to reach for him, to surrender to the bond that was growing between them. But the shadows reminded her of caution, the rival, and the secrets she still protected. The night held them suspended, two hearts bound by invisible threads of desire and destiny, caught between fear and the magnetic pull that neither could resist. And as they finally parted, reluctantly, painfully, the forest seemed to whisper the truth they both already knew. The bond had begun, and nothing could stop it now. The morning sun struggled to pierce the thick fog that had settled over Eldenwood, casting the village in muted shades of gray. Yet the calm was deceptive. Word had spread quickly. The rival pack member had not left quietly, and whispers of unrest stirred in every corner. The Alpha moved through the village with a calculated presence, every villager aware, whether they realized it or not, that danger lurked just beyond the trees. Elara stayed close, her heart pounding as tension hung like a blade in the air. She had promised herself restraint, but her instincts screamed otherwise. When a scream rang out near the edge of the square, she was already running, following the sound with her keen senses guiding her. A group of villagers had gathered around a struggling young man, one of the Alpha's trusted pack members, pinned by the rival who had returned under the cover of fog. The rival's growl was low and menacing, each movement designed to intimidate, to assert dominance. Elara's pulse surged, and without thinking, she stepped forward. The forest had taught her well, instinct took over. With a swift motion, she shifted subtly, her shadow elongating, her movements faster than any ordinary human could manage. The rival staggered back, surprise flashing across his face as her talisman glowed faintly under her cloak. The Alpha's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Enough. His eyes burned with authority, but in them there was something more. Pride, recognition, and a protective intensity aimed solely at her. The rival snarled, recovering enough to lunge again, but the Alpha was there, moving with the precision of a predator. Together, their movements formed a deadly dance, two forces aligned, the tension between them electrifying. Elara's heart thundered not from fear, but from the undeniable pull of their bond. When the rival finally retreated, vanishing into the depths of the forest, silence fell. The villagers stared, awe and fear mingling in their eyes. And in that moment, the Alpha turned to Elara, his dark gaze locking onto hers. "You're reckless," he said, though the corners of his mouth hinted at something unspoken, a flicker of admiration hidden beneath the warning. "Do you understand the danger you put yourself in?" Elara swallowed hard, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. "I couldn't just watch," she admitted, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. He stepped closer, the heat of his presence pressing against her, his fingers brushing against hers as if testing the bond that neither dared name aloud. "You're stronger than I realized," he murmured. The words were a whisper, but the weight behind them sent a shiver through her, and more, dangerous to yourself and to anyone who underestimates you. Elara felt a flush creep across her cheeks, part pride, part fear, part something she couldn't name yet. Desire, perhaps, and the pull of their inevitable connection. As the forest around them seemed to sigh with relief, one thought lingered in her mind, heavy and certain. The bond between them was no longer just a secret yearning. It was a force, and if the rival returned, and he would, they would be ready. But the question remained, would they survive what was coming? Together, the village square had never felt so alive, yet the energy was tense, charged with the undercurrent of looming confrontation. Villagers moved about nervously, sensing the ripples of power that had begun to shift beneath their quiet lives. At the center, the Alpha stood like a dark monument of strength, his gaze scanning the crowd until it landed squarely on Elara. Her chest tightened, every instinct screamed caution, but she could not look away. She felt the pull between them like a tether, invisible yet unbreakable, winding tighter with every heartbeat. The rival had returned, more brazen this time, and the tension crackled like lightning across the clearing. He stepped forward, eyes glinting with malice, ready to claim what he believed was his. But before he could speak, the Alpha's low growl cut through the air, stopping him in his tracks. "She is mine," the Alpha declared, his voice booming across the square. Every syllable carried authority, power, and the undeniable truth of possession. The villagers froze, whispering in shock, while the rival's smirk faltered. Elara's heart thudded painfully in her chest. "Mine," the word echoed, powerful and possessive, yet comforting in a way she had not dared imagine. She wanted to deny it, to hide behind the mask of a simple villager, but the intensity in his eyes left no room for pretense. The Alpha stepped closer, his presence overwhelming yet protective, wrapping around her like a shield. "Do not mistake my patience for weakness," he warned, his gaze fixed on the rival. "She belongs to me. Any who threaten her will answer to me." Her lips parted, caught between awe and disbelief. She wanted to speak, to protest, but no words could capture the storm of emotions surging through her. Fear, longing, relief, and the undeniable pull of a bond she could no longer ignore. The rival hesitated, then retreated into the shadows, vanishing as quickly as he had appeared. The Alpha's attention shifted back to her, and for a moment the world around them seemed to dissolve. Only the two of them remained, suspended in the charged silence of recognition and acceptance. You claimed me," she whispered, voice trembling. "I did," he said simply, but there was nothing simple about the way he looked at her. Each dark glance, each subtle movement, spoke of protection, obsession, and the undeniable truth. She was his mate, his destined bond, and he would fight for her until the end. Elara felt a shiver ripple through her, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. The village, the rival, the world beyond. It all faded to the edges of her awareness. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel the weight and warmth of belonging, the intoxicating pull of a connection she had long denied even to herself. And as the moonlight glinted off her talisman, pulsing faintly in tandem with her heartbeat, she understood that nothing, no rival, no secret, no fear, would ever change what had been claimed tonight. The forest outside Eldenwood had grown unnervingly silent, as if the trees themselves held their breath in anticipation. Moonlight filtered through the dense canopy, casting silver shadows that danced like specters across the forest floor. Elara's talisman pulsed warmly against her chest, a steady rhythm that mirrored the rapid thudding of her heart. Tonight, everything would change. The rival pack had returned, bolder than ever, and this time there would be no hiding, no pretending. The Alpha moved beside her, his presence a steadying force, his eyes scanning the darkness with predatory precision. Every muscle in his body radiated tension, readiness, and an unwavering protective instinct that made her chest ache in ways words could not capture. "You're ready for this," he murmured, his voice low, intimate, just for her. "I won't let anything happen to you." Elara swallowed, the knot of fear and anticipation in her stomach tightening. "I don't know if I can," she admitted, her voice barely audible over the whisper of the wind through the trees. "You can," he said firmly, tilting her chin so their eyes met. "I believe in you, and more importantly, I believe in us." The rival appeared suddenly, a dark figure emerging from the shadows with a snarl that curdled the air. His eyes locked on Elara, full of malice and hunger. He had come to take what he thought was his, but he hadn't counted on the Alpha, and he certainly hadn't counted on her. Elara's fear ignited, morphing into something stronger. Her hands trembled as she drew on the hidden power she had kept suppressed for so long. The talisman glowed brightly, the warmth flooding her veins, infusing her movements with uncanny strength and precision. She lunged forward, a blur of motion, intercepting the rival before he could reach her. The Alpha moved with synchronized precision, a lethal predator and protector working in tandem. Together, they cornered the rival, their combined force overwhelming. The fight was fierce but brief. The rival's arrogance was no match for the bond between destined mates, a bond that lent them strength beyond anything ordinary. With a final, guttural growl, the rival was driven back, retreating into the shadows from which he had emerged. Silence fell over the clearing. Elara's chest heaved with exertion, sweat and adrenaline mingling on her skin, but it was over, for now. The Alpha stepped close, his hand brushing against hers, fingers entwining instinctively. "You see," he murmured, his lips brushing her ear, "nothing can break what's ours, not now, not ever." Tears threatened her eyes, not from fear, but from the overwhelming release of tension, the knowledge that her power, her true self, had been seen, acknowledged, and accepted. She leaned into him, letting herself feel the warmth, the protection, the undeniable bond that now bound them together. The forest seemed to sigh, the shadows retreating as if in acknowledgement of the new balance. The curse that had haunted her, the threat that had kept her hidden and fearful, was broken not by magic alone, but by trust, strength, and the undeniable pull of a mate bond that could not be denied. Elara pressed her forehead against his, whispering, "We did it. Together." "Yes," he murmured, voice thick with emotion, together, always. The first rays of dawn spilled through the forest canopy, turning the world golden and warm. Eldenwood, though small and peaceful, had never felt so alive, or so dangerous. News of the confrontation with the rival pack had spread quickly, and whispers followed Alara wherever she went, but she no longer felt the weight of secrecy pressing her down. She had survived, and more importantly, she had revealed a strength she had long kept hidden, not just to the Alpha, but to the world. The Alpha walked beside her, quiet and vigilant. His hand brushed hers occasionally, a subtle reminder that their bond was no longer hidden, no longer forbidden. His dark gaze scanned the surroundings with a protective intensity. But when it flicked to her, there was something else. Pride, awe, and a flicker of something that made her pulse quicken. "Alara," he murmured as they reached the clearing near the village edge. "You've done more than I could have imagined, not just for yourself, but for all of us." She shifted uncomfortably, feeling the weight of his praise. "I just did what had to be done." Her voice was steady, but inside, a fire burned, fueled by the recognition she had long yearned for. "More than had to be done," he insisted, his hand brushing hers again. "You saved a member of the pack, you revealed your true strength, and you did it without losing yourself in fear. That is rare." Alara's cheeks flushed at his words. She had spent so long hiding, pretending to be an ordinary villager, fearful of what people would think if they saw her true self. Now, standing in the morning light, she realized that her fears were unfounded. Her power, her courage, and even the bond she shared with the Alpha were no longer threats. They were her truth. The villagers emerged cautiously from their homes, eyes wide with awe as they glimpsed the pair. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some stared, others murmured, but all recognized the shift. Alara was no longer just a villager. She was formidable, brave, and undeniably significant. The Alpha's gaze softened as he tightened his hold on her hand. "Do you see?" he asked quietly, almost as if speaking to her alone. "No one can underestimate you now. You've shown your worth, and it's undeniable. Your place is with us, with me." Alara swallowed, the warmth of his words and presence filling the spaces that had been empty for so long. Her talisman rested against her chest, glowing faintly in response, as if acknowledging the bond that had been strengthened not just by love, but by courage and truth. For the first time, she felt the full weight of who she was, and who she could be. Strong, capable, and worthy, and standing beside the Alpha, she realized that she did not need to hide anymore. She was seen, she was recognized, and she was ready to step fully into her power, her place, and her destiny. As the sun climbed higher, lighting the forest in warmth and promise, Alara's heart swelled with a fierce joy. The shadows of her past were gone, and the future, bound to him, to the pack, and to her own strength, was hers to embrace. The forest clearing was bathed in golden sunlight, the leaves rustling softly in a gentle breeze. It felt as if the world itself had paused, giving them this one perfect, fragile moment. Alara stood beside the Alpha, her hand in his, and for the first time, the weight of secrecy, fear, and hesitation was gone. Their bond, once simmering beneath tension and longing, now pulsed freely, undeniable and complete. She looked up at him, tracing the sharp lines of his jaw, the depth in his dark eyes. I never thought I could feel this. Safe, she whispered, her voice trembling with the emotion she had kept buried for so long. Or that someone could see me, truly see me. The Alpha's thumb brushed lightly against her knuckles, a slow, deliberate caress that made her pulse skip. "You've always been extraordinary," he murmured, his voice low and full of reverence. "I just finally had the honor of recognizing it and claiming it, not as a protector, not as a leader, but as your mate." Her chest tightened, a mixture of awe and overwhelming relief flooding her. She felt the magnetic pull of the bond between them, strong and vibrant, connecting them not only physically, but in a way that words could never capture. Every glance, every brush of skin, every heartbeat seemed to echo in perfect harmony. He stepped closer, and the world narrowed until it was only the two of them. "Alara," he breathed, "we've been fighting shadows for too long, tonight. Now, I want nothing hidden between us." Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but they were not of sorrow. They were of release, of joy, of finally surrendering to the love and destiny that had been waiting for her. She reached up, cupping his face, feeling the rough warmth of his skin beneath her fingers. "I'm yours," she whispered, her voice firm yet tender, "all of me." His lips hovered over hers for a heartbeat that stretched into eternity. Then, finally, he closed the distance, and the kiss that followed was everything she had feared, longed for, and dreamed of. It was gentle yet possessive, a declaration, a promise, a release. She melted into him, every tension and fear dissolving in the warmth and certainty of his embrace. When they finally pulled back, breaths mingling, hearts pounding, the forest around them seemed to sigh in acknowledgement. The talisman at her chest pulsed faintly, a quiet affirmation of their bond, now fully realized and unbreakable. "You are my heart," he murmured against her hair, voice thick with emotion, "and I am yours, forever." Elara closed her eyes, letting the words settle deep within her soul. The trials, the secrets, the dangers, they had led to this. She was not just seen, not just claimed. She was loved wholly and unconditionally, heart-bound to the alpha she had feared, desired, and finally trusted. And in that forest clearing, with the sunlight wrapping them in warmth, she knew without doubt that nothing could ever undo this moment. Their hearts beat together, perfectly aligned, as destiny itself had intended. The village square, once a place of ordinary routines and whispered gossip, felt different now. Morning sunlight spilled over the cobblestones, painting everything in a warm, golden glow, but there was an electric tension in the air, a sense that change had arrived, unstoppable and undeniable. Elara walked confidently among the villagers, her head held high, talisman tucked beneath her cloak, yet glowing faintly with her presence. No longer did she feel the weight of hiding. No longer did she shrink at the alpha's gaze or suppress the power that simmered within her. She had survived the rival, revealed her strength, and, most importantly, claimed her place as his mate, and today she would finally step fully into that truth. Children paused mid-play, eyes wide as they noticed the subtle shimmer of her shifter energy. Merchants exchanged startled glances, whispers tumbling across the square. Some stared in awe, some in disbelief, but all were forced to recognize the transformation. Elara's mere presence radiated authority and power, a quiet yet undeniable command that drew every gaze. The alpha walked beside her, tall and protective, his hand brushing against hers, fingers intertwining. His dark eyes swept the crowd, ensuring no threat dared emerge. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice low and steady, carrying that familiar undercurrent of dominance and care that made her pulse quicken. Elara inhaled, letting the crisp morning air fill her lungs. "I am," she said firmly. The words felt like a spell, anchoring her to this moment, this new self. She stepped forward, allowing herself to be seen, not as a villager, not as a secretive girl hiding in shadows, but as the woman she had always been, powerful, brave, and claimed by destiny. The villagers watched as she approached, and murmurs rippled through the crowd. "It's her. It's really her," one whispered. "The girl we all thought was just another villager." Elara lifted her chin, meeting their eyes with calm confidence. She gave a small, gracious nod, acknowledging their curiosity without fear. For years she had hidden, blending into the background, pretending to be ordinary. Now she embraced her true self fully, her bond with the alpha blazing like an unspoken declaration. The alpha's voice carried over the square, commanding attention. "She is no longer a villager," he declared, dark eyes fixed on her with undeniable pride. "She is my mate, strong, capable, and vital to the pack. Any who doubt her will answer to me." The villagers froze, the finality of his words settling over them like a weight. Awe replaced skepticism, respect replaced disbelief, and whispers became reverent acknowledgement. Elara's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the power of recognition. Her identity, her strength, and her bond with the alpha all acknowledged publicly. She felt the alpha's hand tighten around hers, a silent promise, a grounding force. "You've embraced who you are," he murmured, "and now the world sees you too." Elara allowed herself a small smile, a mixture of relief, pride, and quiet joy. The village had watched her transformation, and they could no longer deny it. She was no longer a hidden villager. She was a force to be reckoned with, a mate claimed, and a woman fully in her power. And as the sun rose higher, bathing the village in light, Elara finally felt the serenity she had long sought. Her past left behind, her truth embraced, and her future, bright and unshakable, stretching before her. The forest clearing was serene, bathed in the soft glow of the late afternoon sun. The air smelled of pine and earth, sweet and grounding, carrying with it the quiet promise of peace. Elara stood beside the Alpha, their hands entwined, hearts still bound by the fierce pull that had guided them through every trial. The distant sounds of the village reached them, muted and peaceful now, a stark contrast to the chaos that had once threatened to consume them both. She looked up at him, the Alpha, her mate, her constant, and felt a surge of gratitude and love so profound it made her chest ache. Every fear she had harbored, every secret she had protected, every moment of uncertainty, it had all led to this. Here, in the heart of the forest, she was truly herself, fully seen and wholly claimed. "You've come a long way," he murmured, his dark eyes soft, yet still carrying that powerful intensity that made her pulse race. "And I've never been more certain of anything in my life than I am of you, of us." Elara pressed closer, letting herself feel the warmth and safety radiating from him. I never thought I'd feel this, complete," she whispered. "But with you I feel whole." The Alpha tilted her chin gently, forcing her gaze to meet his. "Then we face everything together, the pack, the dangers, the future, all of it." His thumb brushed across her cheek, tender yet possessive. "I am yours, Elara, and you are mine, forever." A soft breeze rustled through the clearing, carrying away the shadows of doubt and fear that had once clung to them. Elara's talisman glimmered faintly against her chest, a heartbeat in sync with her own, a symbol of the bond that had weathered trials, curses, rivalries, and secrecy. "I trust you," she breathed, her lips brushing his in a kiss that was both gentle and infinitely deep. "Completely, always." He pulled her into a full embrace, strong and unyielding, yet filled with a tenderness that only the two of them shared. In that embrace, they were more than Alpha and mate, more than shifter and human, more than the sum of the worlds that had threatened to keep them apart. They were two hearts, intertwined and unbreakable, bound by fate, love, and the promise of forever. The forest around them seemed to exhale in quiet acknowledgement. Birds chirped softly, leaves rustled, and the sunlight danced across their joined forms, as if nature itself celebrated the union. For the first time in years, Elara felt entirely safe, entirely loved, and entirely free. As they stepped forward together, hand in hand, she glanced at him and smiled, a mix of mischief, love, and unshakable certainty. "So, we face the pack, the future, and everything else." Together, he smirked, a hint of that old mischievous confidence returning. Together, he confirmed forever. And in that moment, with the world stretching out before them, and the forest witnessing their union, Elara knew the truth she had long yearned to accept. She was no longer hiding, no longer fearing, and no longer alone. She was his, he was hers, forever. The bond between them pulsed steady and eternal, a heartbeat echoing through time, space, and the very soul of Eldenwood. And with every step they took into their shared future, love, trust, and destiny intertwined, sealing a story that would endure for all their lives.